So today's topic is about how to support someone you love, say a family or a friend, who is suffering anxiety or depression. And it can be a very worrying thing to have to experience, because it leaves us helpless, because all you want to do when you care about someone and they're not feeling good is you want to support them the best you can. You want to help them, you want to be there for them, and you want to find a solution. And so there's a couple of things that are typical that we do and that perhaps are not helpful. So I'm going to run through some things not to do, some don't do's first before I go into what is helpful, because it's always good to know. So in a lot of stressful situations, our first instinct of what to do is often the most destructive. So if you think about anything that causes us to have a negative emotion, so like if you're angry, you feel like really getting into the anger, engaging the fight or whatever. It's the same with someone having anxiety or depression. Sometimes when we feel helpless or frustrated or worried, our instinct might be not the right thing to do. All right, so going through what not to do. If your friend, partner, child has anxiety or depression, now the first thing is that we try and relate what someone else is going to back to our own experience of life. So it's easy to kind of revert to that. Oh, I understand what you're going through. Look, I understand. I've been there. I've felt this. I've this. The truth is that we can never really understand what someone else is feeling, what they're thinking, or what they're going through. So saying you understand often doesn't help the person that's suffering with the anxiety. Another thing that we often do is tell them all the good things, like, how can you be depressed? Look at your life. You've got everything, you're healthy. You've got, there's people in worse situations, people in other countries are starving or dying, or at least you don't have this or that going wrong with you. And telling people to just think positive. When you are feeling anxious or depressed, thinking positive isn't the answer, because anxiety and depression are physical. So there's physical stuff going on in the body. It's not a thinking thing. It does not help to know that someone else is in a worse situation, and especially not to be told that. So sometimes it might help for us to become aware of it if it's us trying to reframe something, but for someone else to tell you, like, why are you feeling like that? Because we're actually unvalidating that person's experience. So the other thing not to do is don't run your life around the anxious person in your family, or the anxious person, the anxious friend, or the depressed friend, where you're tiptoeing, you're watching what you're saying. I've seen this so many times. It's like, oh, we can't do that because, or we can't tell them that, or we can't say that. So you start being avoidant. So it's like that person's now got this little special thing that you avoid doing, telling, saying, confronting, whatever it is. Don't judge. Judgment feels so harsh and so wrong, and it might not be intentional, but this is a physical thing, anxiety and depression. It feels really crappy. So to think judging thoughts like, oh, I don't know why they're like that, or, oh, if I was her or him, I'd just, do this or do that. It does feel awful to feel that judgment coming down, and sometimes it's not even judgment, but that person might perceive it that way. The other thing is, don't feel sorry for them. Don't pander to them. There's a thing called a secondary gain, which means that when we fall down, other people start picking up, and that then means that it becomes beneficial for us to stay down. I'll talk a bit more about that later, but definitely do not pander to someone who's got anxiety or depression. Don't see them as incapable or as hopeless. I know when someone has long-term mental health issues, we start to think, oh, they couldn't do that. Oh, they can't go and get a job, or they wouldn't be able to do that, or this. It's like a can't mentality, but you're actually projecting it onto them, because it's like how if you don't believe in yourself, then you won't. And if other people don't believe in you, then you won't either. And so as family and friends of someone with anxiety and depression, it's really important that we don't start to think of them as hopeless or weak or incapable or anything like that. Another don't think that you know the answers, or try and tell them, if you just do this or you just do that, because that's not helpful. It's not helpful. They are your answers, your solutions. A person that is suffering with these feelings needs to be able to find their own. What would work for one person doesn't necessarily work for the other. Another don't tell someone it's all in their head. Oh, this is all you doing this. It's all in your head. If you just stopped, letting your thoughts get to you, then this wouldn't be a problem. Number 9, don'ts. All the don'ts first. We'll do the do's next. Don't blame yourself, especially true for parents, or if there's a relationship where one person feels guilty for something. You are not the cause of someone else's anxiety or their depression. Depression and anxiety are physical responses. They are not your fault. It's not because you weren't a good enough parent, or you didn't give the child enough attention, or you did something wrong in your relationship. Number 10, don't take responsibility for what's not yours. So that's where you're doing for someone. So because this goes back to feeling sorry for them, seeing them as incapable, and the next thing you know, you're the one on the phone. And I get this all the time. It's like, oh, hi, I'm calling about my husband. He's really depressed. I want to book him in. Or I'm calling about my child, da, da, da. Now, if child is 8, that's fine. If child's 18, there's a point where the child has to take responsibility. And I'll talk about why that's important a bit later on as well. So don't do for. It's that boundary line between enabling someone and being supportive. There's a line there. So number 11 is don't take things personally. This isn't about you. Anxiety and depression can cause people to behave in ways or say things or feel like they're shutting you out or rejecting you, or letting you down even, because when we have anxiety and depression, we're not in a good space to show up for people, to be there for other people, to be able to interact well at times. And emotions get really big and scary and ugly sometimes. And whatever's going on for someone else, whatever they're doing or saying, isn't about you. So don't take it personally. Number 12, when people with anxiety and depression, if it's friends or whoever, start to push you away and distancing themselves, that's them protecting themselves. Don't let them push you away. Keep that connection going, even when they keep pulling away or withdrawing. I know I've had friends in the past that you just don't hear from them. They just go into this like cave and they don't come out. And I've watched other people do it and become very, very lonely. The thing with anxiety and depression is that you can't cope with, often, depending on the person, they can't cope with being around people, or they shy away from social interaction. However, deep down, they are really, really lonely. Number 13, don't be scared. Fear is a very, very poor space to make decisions from, and it's also not helpful. Faith is so much stronger and more powerful than fear. Fear is like a primitive thing, and faith is like a more evolved kind of place to operate from. So let's go through the do's, what to do. Just be there. That doesn't mean you need to talk. You can just literally sit with someone. So having somebody sitting beside you that's reading a book is comforting, because that person's still there with you. Do use physical touch, especially for anxiety. Some people don't like physical touch, so just keep it at the level that the person's comfortable with. But I do remember my sister at a wedding, she was having a panic attack. This was like 8 years ago or something, and she said, I have to go. And I remember I said to her that, just breathe. And I just put my arm around her and held her. And I remember feeling like, oh, wow, she's just really like a little child, just sort of clinging into me. And she just stood there like a frozen rabbit, just with that anxiety. But just having somebody that has a hand just, on your shoulder or something, that just that little bit of touch can be very calming for somebody. and being able to slow things down, like just slow down and be there, you know, whether it's a cup of tea or just asking a question. Remember that if you engage somebody's mind to answer a question, then it's moving them away from something else. So you can use redirection when you're talking, and questioning is a fantastic one. And that's actually one of the points that I've got further down. Do treat them like a normal person. Don't talk about, oh, your anxiety or because you're anxious or because you're depressed or whatever. Just treat them the same as normal. No, it's like if someone has cancer, they don't want to be treated differently. It's not something that you need to tiptoe around. Do accept the person where they are at emotionally, physically, and mentally right now. It's like when you are dealing with a child, for example. If that child in that moment is, you know, sad because of something, just meet them where they're at. Meet the person, meet the adult or the child or whoever you're dealing with where they are at. So if sad is where they're at, let them be sad. Just say, that must feel really bad to feel like that, and I'm here. That's it. That's enough. It's not like, oh, let's cheer you up. You know, we don't need to cheer anybody up. Just let them feel the feelings. The thing with them feelings and emotions, the big emotions, the ugly emotions, is that a lot of the time we try not to feel them. But in actual fact, they need to be processed. They need to be felt. So if sad or scared or worried is an emotion, then we can sit in sad, scared, and worried and just notice it and breathe through it and sit with it. And that can be helpful to have someone sit with you during that. Okay, do believe in them, in their recovery, in that this is a temporary thing that they're going for. Anxiety and depression are not lifelong conditions. They are a dysregulation. Hey, I'm seeing some comments there. Awesome. Emerging from my cave. Yeah, that's it. We all have a cave. We all go there, and it's good to go there. It's good to feel, and it's good to sit in feelings, and it's good to take some space. We're highly overstimulated and we're constantly engaging. So do believe that people will work their way out. Now, this is in, you know, direct opposition to when we think about people being incapable. People are capable. Everyone is capable. People can go into a state of anxiety. They can suffer that for years even, or depression, but they can also find joy. A person who has anxiety can be calm. A person that has depression can find joy. They're not unlimited. The same as somebody who's happy can feel down or angry or depressed. We all have access to the full palette of rainbow of emotions the whole way through. Tell this person, whoever you are dealing with, that you believe in them. I believe in you. And remind them why. Tell them what you have witnessed in their life that they have done well. You have done this and you have done that. Whether, you know, if the things that you admire them for, I really admire the way you're good at this and you've done this in the past. And remember that time where, you know, you did this. I thought that was amazing. I believe in you. Whatever you're going through right now, I know that you're going to come out the other side. So here, all anyone ever needs to hear, and this is from a friend who suffered anxiety and depression in the past, is this one sentence. And this is your role, your job as a support person for someone with anxiety and depression. Everything is going to be okay. That's all anyone needs to hear. Someone should just be there and say, everything is going to be okay. That's it. That's as simple as it is. Let the person know that the anxiety and depression is a physical condition. It actually is a body condition. It's not actually your head that has anxiety and depression. It's actually your body. It's physical. And therefore, like if you cut yourself or like if you had a sprained wrist or something, it's also completely healable. Let this person know that it's their life. This is your life. This is you going through this. I'm not going through it for, you know, I'm here beside you, but I can't fix it. Only you are the one that can control your life, your destiny, your future, the same as only me can do that for myself. So healing and processing emotions and finding joy and getting through these tough times is something that each person will do for themselves. Helping someone find the strength is really important, or knowing that they've got someone that believes in them or has their back, or that it will be there if they need them is really important, but it's actually each person that can only do this for themselves. Okay, so tell that whoever you're dealing with, I'm here for you when you're ready. So that does not mean picking up the phone and making appointments for them, or hunting down or telling them what to do or anything like that. Use questions. What have you tried? What else can you try? Have you known anyone else who has gone through this before? Like, what's the one thing that you're finding really challenging? How have you, tell me something that you've overcome in the past. Ask questions. Questions are awesome. And just simple questions like, tell me more. They did a study on relationships, and apparently in arguments, if instead of, when your partner or whoever you're arguing says, oh, and you always do this and you didn't even do that and blah, 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 and your first instinct is justify, defend, and explain. Instead of doing that in an argument, if you just said to the person, can you tell me more? It apparently resolves a lot of fighting, as long as you don't use it in sarcasm, of course. So you wouldn't say, oh, tell me more about how I disappoint you. But yeah, look, I can see you're frustrated. Can you tell me more about what you're thinking or feeling? Okay, so tell them how you feel, not what they're doing to you. So when someone in our family or our friends or whatever has anxiety or depression, sometimes it can feel like, man, you are stuffing up my life, my day. Why are you doing this to me? Like, like it's 2:00 in the afternoon and you haven't even got out of bed. Like, I've done all this stuff and you've done nothing. Or like, you're screwing up your life. You've got all this opportunity and why are you not doing it? So tell them what you feel. So say, I feel, and the truth is, if we really get down to it, is I feel really scared. I feel scared that you're never going to come out of this, or I feel scared that, of how you feel. Like if somebody's really depressed, sometimes we can be scared for their safety. If somebody's really anxious, we can feel helpless. I feel helpless. I feel scared. And when you speak to me like that, I get really hurt or whatever. But stick to what you feel, not what they're doing to you, because otherwise it's blame. So we avoid blame. When somebody's feeling anxious and depressed, the last thing they need to do is feel like they're being blamed, judged, or et cetera, et cetera. So be persistent, be consistent, be faithful, have belief in them, be loving. There's a saying that I really like that says that we should always come from a place of love or above. And if you've seen the Hawkins scale of frequency, you will know that like shame and guilt and all that sort of stuff is really low frequency. And then you move up and you get to kind of like acceptance and hope and whatever. But love is the frequency of love or above will always have good outcomes. Whereas when you're operating from fear, when you're operating from resentment or frustration or loathing, they're always going to be low vibrations, have a low outcome. And whoever you're dealing with is going to feel that as well. So that's always really important. So saying things like, I love you and it hurts me to see you suffer, but I believe in you. I know you can do this. I know that this is something that you're going through and it feels really awful, but because I believe in you, I'm not going to do it for you. I'm not going to take responsibility, and I'm not going to allow you to avoid life. So giving that extra ability, that enabling stuff, where it's like the person now has benefits from being this way. So it can get very, very tough. It's like dealing on another level. It's kind of like dealing with addiction. It's like there's always, if you're the parent of an addict, you're always thinking, but what if I don't help them and then, they die or something like that, something really awful happens because I didn't save them. The truth is we can't save people with anxiety. We can't save people with depression. We can't save people with addiction or eating disorders or any of that other stuff. All we can do is love them and set boundaries, because people will always push the boundary as far as they can go. So if I'm feeling anxious and depressed and you let me stay in bed all day and you let me yell and scream and carry on and you let me, control you, basically, because there's a control factor in this stuff, you know. So if somebody's avoiding responsibility, they're willing to hand it over. If somebody's avoiding life, there's the ability for someone else to pick up those reins. And you know, it's hard to let something lie when we can see that someone else has dropped the ball. So it's important to be here with the person, but not enabling them. There's a thing about human behavior that we're always either moving away from something or towards something. Now, you know that in anxiety and depression, those people, and if you felt anxiety before, if you felt depression, you're moving away. You are like, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to be there. I don't want to do that. I like, this feels horrible. It's an away thing. Like, you'll do anything to get away from feeling anxious or feeling depressed, and your motivation's gone. You just don't feel like you want to do stuff. But the truth is that in that moving away phase, we're never going into good places. The other motivator in life is moving towards. You know, have you heard of the donkey? You can either like get them with the carrot or the stick. So it's like they're either moving away from the stick or they're moving towards the carrot. So instead of sort of removing all the sticks out of a person's life, oh, look, they're anxious and depressed, I'm going to remove all the pain out of their life. I'm going to try and help them by making life more comfortable and easier for them. That's our first instinct, but it isn't the best instinct. What we are better off to do is to let the person feel the pain enough so that they can have some kind of motivation to move out of that pain, but then help them to see the carrots, help them to see the things to move towards. What is it that this person loves to do or loved to do in the past? With depression, it might feel like there's nothing that they're interested in, even if they did in the past. Bringing that little bit of motivation, joy, hope into someone's life to just get them to take a step but they have to take the step. We can't carry people with anxiety and depression. They need to be ready to do it. And that's why in the Anxiety Free Life program that I run, I interview each person and we talk about, are you ready to do this for you? Because there is no benefit of somebody being forced to do something, because we won't change until we're ready to change. We won't take action until we're ready to take action. So people need a why of why they want to recover. It might just be, I am sick. A lot of people that actually do the program say, I am sick of feeling like this. I've had enough. So how can you have enough of something if somebody else has made it comfortable for you to stay there? You won't. So remember that when you're dealing with people, is love or above, be there physically. Don't try and solve it. Don't take responsibility. Listen. Don't offer solutions. And remember, it's not about you. It's not your fault. And it's something that people do need to solve for themselves. Okay, so when somebody is in a highly negative emotional state, they will have tunnel vision. It physically happens. Our peripheral vision closes, but it also happens on an emotional and mental level. Feels like all we can see is this, terribleness or anxiety or depression. So being able to help people to relax and be able to take in some of the peripheral stuff, like other things. Questions, again. So asking about things that they're interested in or love, like, how if it's a person with children, tell me about your children, tell me about your dog, tell me about, the kind of little things, like how many people, when you ask them about their pet, suddenly there's a level of like joy. You can see their face light up because, kids and animals and those kind of things, they really, really do connect us to our happy places in our heart. So healing is possible, but only when people are ready to do it for themselves. Empowerment. When people are anxious and depressed, they actually have a loss of personal power. Their identity starts to shift. They start to believe that they are identifying, I'm depressed or I'm anxious or I'm, worthless, useless, hopeless, blah, blah, blah stuff. So ability, capability, power, identity, they are all things that we can help someone just rediscover in themselves by reminding them. When we're anxious, when we're depressed, it is usually because we've lost power in our life, we have gone into a victim mode. Victim mode can look very angry, because you can either be a victim with excuses, like this like sort of like the person that you feel like taken care of, or you can be an angry victim, which I call an aggressor. That's all about blame. Like, I can't help being like this. It's all everybody else's fault. It's because this happened to me. Both of those stances, whether it's the excuses or the blame, are extremely powerless. And it's not until we step into creator, where we start to say that we have a bit of power in our life to control outcomes. So helping somebody remember a time when they actually were powerful. So where they actually made something happen in their life, where they actually made a decision that went well, where they actually succeeded at something. Because what causes us to feel powerless is actually things that happened in our life that were distressing. So there's the little t trauma, like, you know, the little traumas that don't count as traumas if you're telling a story. It's just felt traumatic to us, but it doesn't make a great story. Or the big T traumas, and they're all the, you know, stuff that police and ambulances kind of get involved in. So, and then generational trauma. So how somebody gets anxious could be from a number of things, but basically it's life, what happens to us and what we experience in our life, and how that gets processed, and whether or not we were able to process the event, the situation, and the emotions at the time to gain resolution. So unresolved stuff. And we all have it. I have it. I still have it. I'm still working through stuff. Little T's, big T's, all T's. There's always stuff in each of us that cause us to have unresolved stuff. So if you're a parent, and this is an important thing to know, and this is something that I remind myself with my kids, if you are a parent, it doesn't matter how good a parent you are, you're part of your child's history. You are part of their story. Now, even the most fabulous parents, when I get a client in here, they could be 16 or 60. There's always a mum or dad, there's mum and dad stuff there, because no matter how good a job you did, something that you do as a parent is taken by the child as, you know, it wasn't what they wanted or what they enjoyed or what landed in the right way. So because of that, we're entangled with our kids. Now, if you're a spouse, you've been attracted into your spouse's life because you trigger or mirror, or you're part of that person's pattern. So there's all these patterns and entanglements that we create in our relationships. So when we have a friend or a family member or a child who has anxiety or depression, we are part of that child's story. Now, I know from my point of view that when I've had a family member with severe anxiety, severe depression, what I felt was that person's anxiety and depression became a part of my story too. Because when you love somebody who has a mental illness and you're dealing with that, that's now a part of your story that you've gone through, having to support that person or wanting to support that person or interacting with that person on that level. So remember that we're all part of each other's story. We all influence each other, and how we show up really makes a difference. Being able to show that we believe in someone and matching our actions to our words. So sometimes what we do to people or with people is we say, I believe in you, everything's going to be okay. But our actions are that of an enabler. Now, if you're enabling, taking responsibility, being overly supportive, overly helpful, or overly controlling, the message that you're actually giving the person is, I don't believe you can actually do this on your own, and you need me to save you. That's the complete opposite to I believe in you. So it does get quite complex, because you've got these urges. I love you, therefore I want to protect you from feeling hurt. I want to save you. I want to help you. And then the other part of it is like, I believe you can do it, and I'm here to support you. Balancing that is quite tricky. And so it's really important to always check in regulate your own emotions, check in. Am I acting from a place of fear, worry, despair, or am I coming from a place of love and faith? There's a very different feeling from that. I know, look, I've been through like the anxiety, the depression. I've supported family members with anxiety, depression, etc. And I know where I went wrong and I know where I went right. And the fear stuff, that anything you do out of fear is not going to be helpful. Focus on the relationship. So it can be really easy to get into conversations like, oh, why didn't you do this? Or if you only did that, or just focus on having, being in the moment and enjoying the person in that moment as they are right now, as messed up, as depressed, as anxious, as addicted, or whatever this person is that you're supporting. Just be there in the moment with that person, with them. And try and get the joy in that moment without going into the future or into the past. That's being present is really, really valuable. I know in support groups for parents of addicts, that's one of the things that people really struggle with when they're supporting family members with addiction, and it is very, very similar with anxiety and depression, is that you've got this person in front of you, and your neuroception is set up to check for, are they cracking? Are they doing something that I don't know about? Are they this? Are they that? You're looking for the problem all the time when you're with the person, because you know that they're suffering this problem. It's not helpful for you to identify them as a problem or even think about what they're going to do in 10 minutes time. Just be there and be able to have the conversation about now. So when people lose people that have anxiety and depression, they do regret not just having those moments and always focusing on the problem. And remember, we cannot fix something for someone else. So that being there for them in that way is really, really valuable. If you have any experience with this in your personal life, I would love to hear from you. It's good to share and help and support each other in these things, because they are very, very frightening experiences. It's a very helpless feeling to not be able to help someone else and to worry about what's going to happen in somebody's future when you love that person so much and just want good things for that person. And to see someone going through anxiety or depression or any of those other things is really, really hurts a lot, and it really does feel awful. So I hope that some of that has helped, and would love to hear from you. Have a good night, and I will see you live next week.